welcome to Size Me. I'm Donna, if you didn't already know that. So this tutorial, we're just going to go through the basics of how to understand a cutting layout and how to transfer construction marks across onto the fabric once we've done that. Going to start right at the beginning, guys. I don't make any apologies for that because there's probably some newbies watching and I like to make sure we cover everything. So we're going to go through the most common cutting layouts that you see and the things for you to look out for when you're looking at other layouts, and then we'll go through the construction marks and we'll go through why they're important. I do know some of you ignore them. Hey, I'm not judging anybody here, but I think if I tell you why they're important, it might make you pay a little bit more attention to them in the future. I would always advise to use them, but you know, I know life gets in the way, guys. So we're going to start off right at the beginning. So before we can interpret the cutting layout that comes with our patterns, we really need to make sure that we know what a selvage edge is for fabric. So I have a piece of fabric here. So that bit that I'm showing you there is where the fabric was cut. Okay, so I can pull bits of thread off, she says, and I can make it fray. Okay. A selvage edge will not fray. It may look, this is a selvage edge, it may look frayed, but you will not be able to pull any of the threads off, okay? So the selvage edge is the bit that's on the roll, like that. So if that's the roll of fabric, these two edges, sorry, getting camera, these two edges that you pull and then cut, these two edges are the selvage edges, okay? All your layouts show you is locations of a fold and locations of a selvage edge, and they expect you to understand what that means. So if we know where the selvage edges are, we've got a fighting chance of working our way through these layouts. So I'm going to start with the very basic layout that you will find, and this is the cutting layout for the Florence jacket. Actually, I've just got a little mini one to show you. So let's hold it up. Right, so that is, it shows you all of the pattern pieces that you are cutting out. The first thing you'll need to do is to find the size that you're doing. Sometimes it will say from size 1 to the other, this layout, and then for any other sizes it'll have a different layout. So once you've established which layout you're going to use, most of the Size Me patterns only have 2 size layouts. Okay, so what we have is the fold on this side, and we're going to put the selvage edges together on this side. It really is as simple as that. I'm going to go through later about how we arrange these pieces onto the layout, but that's the most common cutting layout that you will find. Simply folding the fabric in half so that the selvage edges, sorry, this side, the selvage edges are together and you have one fold in your fabric. Okay, so selvage edges together, she says. We'll go selvage edges together so that we create a fold on this side, and then we have our selvages together on that side. Okay, really simple, that one, and it is the most common. So that's the first one I wanted to show you. The second one I wanted to show you, let me just fold this so that I don't confuse you, is this one. So this is for the Florence skirt, but can you notice there are a fold here and a fold here, and the selvage edge is down the centre, which some people do find really confusing, but it's the best economical way to use your fabric when you've got 2 folds. So what you're going to do for that one is you will take your selvage edges and you will fold them into the centre like that. Okay, so you then end up with a fold on this side, your selvage edges down the centre here, and then a fold on this side. Again, I am going to lay these out, guys, so that you can see it. But it's just to know that these things are different. So that's the second most common one I would say that you would find. What I just folded under on this skirt was, it has 2 layouts for one skirt. So the top is what we just talked about, and that's to do the back facing and the back yoke and the front facing and yoke. So we do 2 folds, selvage edges into the middle. But look at what we do for the skirt bottoms. So it's a completely separate piece of fabric. So you would cut these out first, and then with the remainder of your fabric, you would go back to the simple layout. So it has your selvage edges over here and just one fold in the fabric. So sometimes you do get a layout that splits, and you'll fold your fabric like the top one, and you think, oh God, how do I figure out the bottom one then? Just cut these first, and then refold your fabric to cut those bottom ones. Okay. Right, we're getting into it now, guys. There's only two more that I think are common ones that you will see that we need to talk about. So this is the Florence Boxy Tee. Okay, so that should look familiar. You've got a fold on either side and then the selvage edge down the centre, which is what we've talked about. But take a look at the back and then the sleeve on this side. Can you see how they're a different colour? So they're greyed out. Sometimes they're kind of hatched, but they're greyed out on the SizeMe patterns. That indicates that you need to put the pattern piece the other way around. So by that, I mean when you pin this one, to make it look like this, you will have to take the piece of paper that the pattern is on and put the print facing the fabric. So normally it's that way around and the print is facing the ceiling. But when they're greyed out like that, you want the print of the fabric, print of the paper pattern to face the fabric. So it's kind of turning it into the mirror image. And I am going to go through this in a second, so don't worry about it. So that can be quite confusing because you try to put your pattern pieces to look like this, but these two that are greyed out just physically won't do it. So you just have to flip them round the other way. Okay, I only have one more of these bits of paper to show you. This does not happen often, but it is something that we do on the Florence jacket lining, so I thought I'd best go through it. And basically, lining fabric is narrower, so you can't always just fold it selvage edge to selvage edge because there's not enough width then to put your pieces on. The Florence jacket is that lovely swing coat, so it's quite wide pattern pieces. So what we do is this. So we have a selvage edge up at the top and a selvage edge at the bottom, and then we have a fold on this side. So let me get the piece of fabric to show you what that's doing. So I have a selvage edge here and a selvage edge down here. But what I'm doing is I'm folding the fabric so that the ends of the fabric go together. So this will make a really narrow piece of fabric. So let me show you. So I have a selvage edge at the top. The fold is here and the cut edges are down this side. So what it means is that it can be wider and wider depending on the length of fabric that we have cut. So hopefully that makes sense. But once you understand where the selvage edges are and where you want the fold to be, it does make life a little more simple. I'm just going to show you that up against the jacket. Here we go. So let me get them in the right location. So can you notice that the selvage edge, let me move my finger. It is the selvage edge on this one that's changed. So the folds are in the same place, but the selvage edges are no longer down the side, they're at the top and the bottom. So that's the difference between those two layouts. I'm going to set a few of these up on the table so that you can see. So I'll be back in a second, just need to redo the camera angles and things, and then we can go through it on the table with some actual fabric. Okay, right then. So I folded the fabric in half with the selvage edges facing each other, and then the fold is over here. So that would be this layout. So you've got the fold and the selvage edges on the opposite sides of the fabric. One thing to note is that I always try to put the fabric with the right sides facing each other. It does make the transferring of some construction marks, especially darts, easier. So yes, I would always do right sides together. So that's our first layout, and then we would simply pin our fabric pieces onto this in order for it to look like the layout. I am going to show you that in a second, so don't worry too much about that. So let's have a look at our second type of layout where we have a fold on each side and then the selvage is in the middle. So we're going to take this selvage and we're going to fold it into the middle of the fabric, and then we're going to fold this one over. Now, I haven't done that very even, just because I wanted to show you something. So we've got the selvage edges down the centre, which means we have a fold here, and we have a fold here. Sometimes it isn't absolutely in the middle. It depends how big these pieces are and these pieces are. So you may get it where it's only folded over so much, maybe to get a sleeve, and then the body part comes over here. So this location of the selvage can change, but you will still always have the two folds. Okay, so that's this layout where we've got the selvage edge in the middle. So the other one to show you is the one that we said was for the jacket lining, the one that you don't ordinarily see, to be honest, but I wanted to show you it because it can cause a problem. So on that one, we're going to create a fold this way across the fabric. So we're going to take the cut edge here and here, and we're going to put them together rather than the selvage edges together. Does that make sense, hopefully? So we end up with a much longer piece of fabric here. So we've got our selvage edges coming across here together. So we've got the selvage edges. We then have a fold here, and then this bit will be as long as it needs to be. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a better visual idea of what these layouts look like. Again, I'm just going to move the camera so we get a better angle, and I'm going to pin through a few pattern pieces on, just to tell you some of the important bits. Okay, see you in a sec. So I've just pinned a couple of pattern pieces on here. Notice I have a fold here, over here, and I've got the selvage edge down the centre. Now, I always pin each corner, and then any change in direction, so there's a dart here, so I've put a pin in it, and then I kind of go, once every 12, 15 centimetres, I put a pin. So it's every corner here, bottom, and then there's a couple down each side. Now that will increase if it was a slidey, lightweight fabric. This is quite robust. But I just wanted to show you, there's also a technique in how you pin them and how you cut them out. If we pay attention to this piece, so this is on the fold, and I want you to see that I have pinned it precisely on the fold of the fabric. I haven't done that so that you can see a little bit of the fabric, because you're adding, I'm adding at least 2 centimetres to the actual size of that piece. So when it says to cut out on the fold, and this is the standard symbol for cutting out on the fold, this arrow that then points to the edges, it wants to be precisely on the fold. Again, not overlapping, because you're changing the shape and the size again. If your pattern isn't placed on the fold, it will have something called a grain line. So I'm just going to come over here. So this is a grain line. It's normally an arrow that points down the fabric. It's important that you use the grain line for 2 reasons. So first of all, let's do something that's obvious. I'm just going to draw some arrows. Imagine this is, can you see those? No, you can't see those. Oh, I don't have a better pen, so bear with me. Imagine if this fabric had arrows all pointing in that direction, running all the way down this fabric. And we decided to put this piece or the other way around. When we cut it out, the arrows will then be pointing upwards on that piece. So this is actually the front edge of the jacket. So everything else will be pointing down, and this one would suddenly be pointing up. So it's really important for your fabric direction for the pattern that you pay attention to them, but also for how the fabric drapes. So the grain follows the grain of the fabric. So the fabric is normally woven. So it's not at an angle on the bias. If it was on the bias, it would stretch. So it's important that we keep it parallel to this edge. And the best way to do that is to measure. So to pin everything on, sorry, I've dropped my tape measure. And then you're just going to measure from the edge of the fabric to the grain line and do that all the way up and make sure it measures the same. Okay, so that's what grain lines are for. If you follow the layouts that we looked at earlier, you shouldn't get a piece upside down, but you do want it to be on the grain correctly, so you still would need to do that. The last thing I'd like to show you whilst I have this fabric here before we go on to construction marks is how to cut. I know this sounds really stupid. Some people like rotary cutters and mats. I'm still a scissor girl, I'm afraid. But I just wanted to show you how dressmaking scissors are flat on the edge here, and that's important. If you tried to cut out using these, can you see how the handle here would stop it from being flat against the surface? Let's put those together. Can you see how they're different? So what you're going to do is you're going to be brave, and you're going to use the whole of the blade if you can, but you're going to keep it on the table, because we don't want to pick this up. As soon as we pick it up, we've moved all the fabric. So we're just going to gently slide the scissors underneath and then cut. So can you see I'm not moving anything? The fabric is still nice and flat. Okay, and then we're going to cut up this one. This is incredibly important if you're using a lightweight fabric, that you don't pick up the fabric, because it really will make a difference, because everything will move out of shape. And it is doable. You might have to move around the fabric piece in order to do it. But if you cut your paper as accurately as you can, and then your fabric as accurately as you can, you have a chance of sewing accurately and then having a beautiful garment. So it really does start at this point as your accuracy. So once we've cut these two out, I'm just going to show you how to transfer some construction marks. So I'll leave you to do some cutting out if you're working along with me, and I will see you in a moment to go through that stage. Okay, we've discovered we can understand the layouts, we've cut everything out, and we're now left with all these pieces of fabric cut out with their paper attached, and we need to transfer the construction marks. So first of all, let's just have a little bit of a chat about construction marks. So a construction mark is something that the designer has put in there to help you make the garment. So it can be a notch, like what these lines are indicating, along the edge of the fabric, or it can be a dart that's within the fabric. They're mainly the ones that SizeMe use, so we're going to focus on those two. Some patterns use crosses, triangles, squares, circles that are inside, sort of on this stitch line here. We don't use those, so I'm not going to go into great detail about them. Just be aware that they are there, and you do need to transfer them onto the fabric. What they're there for is two reasons. One reason is to pinpoint a place on the garment that is a fixed location. So those two pieces of fabric have to match at that point. And then it's an indication to you as the sewer to know that between those 2 points that have been matched perfectly, there may be some ease that has to happen between those 2 points. So at least you know what you're working with. So really use them. They're important when you've got fabric that is quite loose weave, because it can move, and you can pinpoint, again with that construction mark that will match, you can pinpoint it's the correct location. The other reason that they're used sometimes, mainly the internal ones that I just talked about that we don't use that often, it's to help with the instructions. So it will say stitch up to the small circle and stop. Otherwise, how do you describe that in the instructions? And the reason there are lots of them, squares, large circles, small circles, is so that you don't get confused as to which one they're talking about. So that's the only reason that they're different. The other one is the darts, etc. Now, obviously, we know what darts are for, and we need to put that construction mark onto the fabric. Otherwise, we're just making it up as we go along. So, construction marks need to be accurate because they are pinpointing a location on the fabric. The easiest ones to do are the notches around the edges, and I use my little mini sheep shears, otherwise known as snips, to do it because you can be super accurate with them. My notches are just lines on the fabric, sometimes they're little triangles, but you use the same process. So I have a couple of notches here and here, and we're just simply, if I can get the right camera angle to show you, we're simply just going to snip through the fabric and the paper at that exact location. We're not going to go too far in because then there's a danger if we go too far that we've created a hole in the actual jacket rather than in the seam allowance. Now, on occasion there'll be 2, 3, possibly 4 of these, so all you will do is each line you'll just create a snip. And that's because, especially for sleeves, normally there are 2 notches on the back of the sleeve and 1 on the front to make sure you don't put it the wrong way around. So yes, if you've got more than 1 line, just snip through them. So I'll do them all on this. There's only 2 marks on this. So that all the construction marks for that piece has been marked off. Now, I don't recommend taking your pattern pieces off now. Lots of people are desperate to take the paper off of their fabric. I don't know why. It must be something in us that makes us want to do it. If you do that, you end up with a pile of pieces of fabric that when it comes to stitching, you're not sure what's what. So I would just leave that on until you're ready to use it. And at that point, you can take the pins out. So they're the easy ones to do the notches. So we've done those. Let's have a look at a dart. So first of all, I'm going to explain to you where the dart is. So let's find a pin to help us to do that. So this is the Florence skirt, and a dart is normally a triangle. As you can see, each size has a different triangle. So what you're going to have to do is these 2 points here and here are the top of your triangle, and then you can follow the line down to get to, I've just put a pin in the tip so you know which one we're working with to get to the bottom. Or you can count, so this is for the smallest size, and you can work your way back which size you are and put a pin in it. Okay, we're going to use a tracing wheel and tracing paper to do this. I think it's the most accurate way of doing it, so I'm going to suggest this is how you do it. There are lots of other ways to transfer darts, but I'm only going to show you this one because I think it's the best. It really helps when you're doing on slippy slidey fabrics too, because you don't have to move anything very far. So let's start off by showing you what the tracing wheels look like. So this one, is a smooth wheel. I prefer this one, to be honest, but they're not as common as the ones that have the little spikes on. So when you use this one, you get little dots on your fabric of colour where the line is, and this one will just give you a solid line. So then it's not a rotary cutter, it's not sharp, it's just a blunt straight edge, okay? And the other thing to show you is this, which is tracing paper. And you get lots of different colours inside, and it's like carbon paper, you know, for those of you that remember carbon paper, I have it in old receipt books now, so you pop it between the paper and you write and it prints it onto the paper below. That's exactly the process that we're using. I've chosen the green one because I think it will show up better on the fabric that I have. But as you can see, I've done lots of darts using the green one. So we've got blank on the back, and the colour is actually on the front. I'm going to move you so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So I won't be a second, and then we can get going. Here are the darts then that we're going to mark. I've just got my metal ruler as well because that will help me keep everything straight. If you remember, I said that I always fold my fabrics with the right sides facing each other. And we want these darts to be marked on the wrong side of the fabric. So we're going to do them one at a time. we're going to slip this green tracing paper all the way underneath, because this is the wrong side of the fabric, yeah? And we're just going to simply lay it over. I know which dart I'm going to mark. I'm going to take a ruler and lay it on that line, like so. And then with the tracing wheel, and it's all about pressure, guys. We're just going to push down all the way down. I might not be able to do it sat down. I'm hoping this is marked. We're going to move it on to the other one. We're going to start it precisely at the right point, and we're going to go all the way up to that one. So fingers crossed. You can turn it over and you can see that green mark is the dart for this correct size. So that's one side. Just going to take this one pin out because we've got two darts, so we're going to mark it on the other side. So I'm going to flip the paper over and I'm going to slide it just underneath the paper so that the green is facing the wrong side of the fabric. And can you see how you're not moving the pattern too much? So it really does help when you're using this for fine fabrics. I'm going to use my ruler again, line it up with the end, go all the way to the top, and then on the other side. Sorry. There we go. I am going to take the pins off just so that you can see this, because this isn't something that I'm making. As I said before, we're not going to be doing that ordinarily. Oh, actually, whilst I do it, I need to mention, you know the construction marks, the notches that we did before? On the Size Me patterns, you need to look out for the folds. Can you see how there is a line there? That is a construction mark. So I just want you to, like you did before, just snip it. There's a lot on the folds because you will match that to the centre point of the waistband, for example. So do look out for those ones. I do try to mention them in the instructions, but yes, do look out for those ones. So yeah, I am going to take the pattern off of this just to show you how the darts look. If you want to have a look at the tutorial on how to do the darts, you can check out the tutorial for the Florence skirt or for the Florence trousers. It will have a good tutorial on both of those. But hopefully you can see that those two darts are now marked. Let me see if I can get closer. So there's one there, and there's one at the other side there. All marked perfectly, ready for you to construct. Right then, guys, I'm guessing you're ready. So just to recap, we talked about the cutting layouts and how you fold the fabric and where the selvage edges. We had a little bit about how to line the grain lines up if it wasn't a piece that was on the fold when you were cutting. Touched upon the method of cutting out, so hopefully you feel much more confident with that. Then we went on to the construction marks. Now there's not a great deal of construction marks in the Size Me patterns. I try to keep them as simple as I can. The main ones to look out for are the notches around the edge that we're just going to snip, not too far because we don't want to go beyond the seam allowance, and also look out for the ones that are on the folds here because there are a few of those. And then we looked at the best method to transfer those darts onto your fabric. So I guess you may all be rushing out to find yourself a tracing wheel and tracing paper. I would invest in that if I was you. It is the best method of doing it in my opinion. So I shall leave you to cut out your fabric, transfer all your construction marks, and then I'll see you in a later tutorial hopefully. So all of our patterns have a tutorial on there, step by step as to how to make them. So hopefully soon you'll be sharing all of your wonderful garments with me. Alright then guys, you take care, see you soon, bye!